Right before Jesus teaches us how to pray, before he gives us the Lord's Prayer, Jesus gives us this little primer on how not to pray. And he gives us three little categories, three ways of thinking about the ways that prayer can go sideways. I've framed them this way: the hypocrites who use prayer as a means to an end, the publicists who use prayer as a practice in image management, and finally, the pagans who use prayer as a way to manipulate the divine. This one is about the pagans. Do not keep on babbling like pagans who think they'll be heard because of their many words. The important phrases here are Batalogeo and Polulogia. More directly, meaningless and populous words. But there are actually two core ideas that I think best capture the intent here. The first is the concept of fluaria. The second is the idea of formula. Fluaria was a Greek concept that was related to this term batalogeo, and it referred together to gossip. Batalogeo literally means meaningless words. Fluaria literally means nonsense, but in common usage, they referred to malicious gossip. And so Ulrich Luz argues the admonition here is not about the wasted words that we use, it's actually about the specific content that we pray. Specifically, prayers that are intended to make someone else look bad, or to make ourselves look good in comparison to them. More importantly here, words that are intended to manipulate God against someone. And I mean, obviously that comes from a very limited imagination of God. The idea that we could change God's mind about someone by gossiping about them in our prayers is on its face kind of absurd, and yet, not sure I'm entirely above the dark arts. I may have prayed at some point this week something along the lines of, God, thank you so much for Rachel. She's an incredible partner. I'm just hoping that you can help her see why it's important that I spend $100 on an F1 subscription for the new season that starts March 15th. Now, by the way, I'm kidding. She watches way more F1 than I do. God, we good. But that's really what the reference is about here, right? It's using gossip in our prayers to try to manipulate God. And don't tell me that you've never prayed about someone else's secret sins. Don't do that. But that is then related to the second word here, Polulogia. That one, John Nolan argues, points towards, and I'll quote him here, the formulaic repetition of elements in order to multiply effectiveness with the gods. In other words, it's about using repetition of certain specific prayers or incantations, again, to force God's hand where we want it. And this was something that was very specific to a plurality of Greek superstitions. Say this prayer, get this outcome. But that's also something that has very much found its way into Christian thinking at times, right? The idea that if you pray a certain way, if you use certain words, if you can find the right combination of utterance and ecstasy, you can bend God to your will. All of these are ways that we use prayer to try to manipulate God. Either to make God think a certain way about a certain someone, or to make God act in the way that we want. And of course, we don't think about it as manipulation, but when it becomes that, no longer our attempts to conform to God's love, but our attempts to shape and conform God to our will, well, then we've lost the point even before we've begun to pray a word.